She finally fell in love with the man who loved her. But just when Hannah Brooks and Lucas Sterling thought they had found their happily ever after, someone secretly stepped into the shadows determined to tear them apart. Lucas was the successful man who had loved Hannah long before she noticed him. Hannah was the once poor girl who finally discovered that the man standing beside her had been quietly protecting and loving her for years. Their love story had survived heartbreak, sacrifice, betrayal, and impossible odds. But now, just as they began building a future together, strange things started happening. Anonymous messages appeared. Secrets from the past resurfaced. Questions neither of them knew how to answer began driving silent wedges between them. And somewhere, someone was smiling. Someone who couldn't accept that Hannah had fallen in love with the man who loved her. Someone who believed Lucas should belong to them instead. But who wanted to tear them apart? Why were they willing to go so far to destroy a love that had taken years to find? And when the truth finally comes out, will Hannah and Lucas's love be strong enough to survive one final test? Or will the very thing that brought them together become the reason they lose each other forever? Read This is the unforgettable story of a woman who finally fell in love with the man who loved her, but discovered that true love is often tested the hardest when it is closest to happiness. Read. 6 months after Hannah Brooks finally noticed Lucas Sterling, life felt almost unreal. The struggles that once defined Hannah's days seemed distant now, yet she never allowed herself to forget them. On a bright Saturday morning, she stood beside Lucas at the old bus station, where their story had secretly begun years earlier. The station looked unchanged. The same benches, the same crowded sidewalks, the same morning rush. Only Hannah had changed. A year ago, she had been a struggling college student working multiple jobs to survive. Now she was one of the city's newest millionaires, thanks to the Brooks family land inheritance. Yet despite the wealth, she still carried herself exactly the same way. The same kindness, the same humility, the same habit of helping strangers whenever she could. Lucas admired that most about her. Not the inheritance, not the beauty, not the success she was beginning to build. Her heart, the same heart that had once given away its only meal to a hungry stranger. The same moment that made him fall in love years ago. Nearby, an elderly homeless man sat alone. Without hesitation, Hannah approached him. Before she could offer help, Lucas handed the man a fresh sandwich and bottled water. Hannah laughed. "You're stealing my job." Lucas grinned. "I learn from the best." The old man smiled gratefully. "God bless both of you." As they walked away together, Lucas slipped his hand into hers. The simple gesture still made Hannah smile. Even now. Even after months together. Because every time she looked at him, she remembered the painful truth. For 3 years, she had walked past the man who loved her without ever noticing him. A memory surfaced. The hospital hallway. Rose fighting for her life. Lucas sitting beside her when she felt completely alone. That was the day everything changed. That was the day she finally saw him. Not as a stranger, but as the man who had quietly stood beside her long before she knew his name. Across the street, another memory was unfolding. A woman stood partially, hidden behind dark sunglasses. Watching. Waiting. Remembering. Olivia Monroe. Elegant. Wealthy. Powerful. And completely unable to move on. Years earlier, she had imagined standing exactly where Hannah stood now. Back then, Olivia had been engaged to Lucas. The future seemed certain. Until Lucas ended everything. The memory still burned. A flashback replayed inside her mind. An expensive restaurant. A diamond bracelet on her wrist. Lucas sitting across from her. The evening she expected a proposal. Instead, she received heartbreak. "I don't think we're building the same future anymore," Lucas had told her. At the time, Olivia believed he would eventually regret leaving. He never did. Then Hannah entered his life. And suddenly, the love Olivia spent years trying to secure was given freely to someone else. Jealousy slowly hardened into resentment. Resentment slowly became obsession. And obsession was becoming something far more dangerous. Across the street, Olivia watched Hannah rest her head briefly against Lucas's shoulder. The sight twisted something inside her. Then her phone vibrated. A message appeared. "Everything is ready." Olivia smiled. Not a happy smile. The kind that appears before a storm. The kind that warns trouble is coming. As Lucas and Hannah disappeared down the street, neither noticed the woman watching them. Neither realized their happiness had already attracted an enemy. And neither knew that before the week ended, the first crack would appear in the trust they had fought so hard to build. Monday morning arrived with the kind of peace Hannah Brooks had once prayed for. After years of financial struggle, uncertainty, and heartbreak, her life finally felt stable. She was completing her final year at university. Rose's health continued improving. And Lucas Sterling, the man who had loved her long before she noticed him, was now a daily part of her life. Yet hidden beneath that peace, invisible cracks were beginning to form. The first appeared shortly after breakfast. Hannah's phone vibrated. Unknown number. At first she ignored it. Then another message arrived. Curiosity 1. She opened it. Attached was a photograph. Lucas sitting across from an elegant woman inside an upscale restaurant. The image looked recent. Very recent. Hannah frowned. The woman seemed familiar somehow. Before she could think further, another message followed. Some people never change. Nothing else. No explanation. No name. Just those 4 words. A strange feeling settled inside her chest. Not suspicion. Not yet. Just discomfort. Across town, Lucas was completely unaware of the message. Inside Sterling Innovations headquarters, he stood before investors discussing a major expansion project. The multi-million-dollar deal had taken months to negotiate. Ironically, one of the people involved was Olivia Monroe. The same woman from the photograph. The same woman Hannah had never met. And the same woman Lucas hoped to avoid as much as possible. A brief flashback surfaced. Years earlier, Olivia had admired Lucas's ambition. But over time, admiration turned into expectation. Then expectation became control. The relationship slowly collapsed beneath competing visions of the future. Lucas never hated Olivia. He simply realized they wanted different lives. Unfortunately, Olivia never accepted that explanation. Back in her office overlooking the city skyline, Olivia studied another photograph. This one showed Hannah opening the anonymous message. A satisfied smile appeared. Because Hannah had reacted exactly as expected. The doubt wasn't visible yet. But Olivia knew something important. The strongest relationships rarely break from one large lie. They break from small doubts planted over time. And she had just planted the first one. The second crack appeared 3 days later. And this time, it was harder to ignore. Hannah Brooks was leaving a lecture hall when her phone vibrated again. The same unknown number. The same unsettling feeling. For several seconds, she stared at the screen. Then slowly opened the message. Another photograph. This one showed Lucas standing beside Olivia Monroe outside a luxury hotel. Olivia was smiling. Lucas appeared serious. The image looked innocent. Yet the timing felt suspicious. Beneath the photograph sat a short message. Are you sure you know everything about him? Hannah's stomach tightened. She immediately wanted to dismiss it. She trusted Lucas. She loved Lucas. But something about the repeated messages bothered her. Not because she believed them. Because she didn't understand why someone kept sending them. That night, she sat beside Rose in the apartment. Rose noticed her distraction immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Rose smiled knowingly. "You always say that when something is wrong." Hannah hesitated, then showed her the messages. Rose studied them quietly. The elderly woman had lived long enough to recognize manipulation. A flashback surfaced in her memory. Years ago, Walter Brooks once warned her about a dishonest business partner. The man never attacked directly. Instead, he spread small doubts, small fears, small suspicions. By the time the truth emerged, the damage had already been done. Rose handed the phone back. "These messages want you to react emotionally." "What if they're true?" Rose looked directly into her eyes. "What has Lucas given you more than anything else?" Hannah answered immediately. "Trust." Rose nodded. "Then don't throw away years of proof because of a few photographs." The advice stayed with Hannah. Meanwhile, across town, Lucas was beginning to notice something unusual. Several confidential meeting schedules had somehow leaked outside his company. Information that should have remained private. Information appearing in places it didn't belong. At first, he assumed it was coincidence. Then it happened again. And again. His instincts immediately activated. Someone inside Sterling Innovations was sharing information. The question was why. Later that evening, Lucas reviewed security reports in his office. Across the city, Olivia Monroe sat inside her penthouse studying Hannah's social media. A slow smile appeared. The second message had been opened. The second seed had been planted. And unknown to both women, another person was watching events unfold. Vanessa Reed, Lucas's trusted executive assistant. The woman who secretly provided Olivia with every schedule, every meeting, and every opportunity needed to create the illusion of betrayal. As Vanessa stared at a framed photograph of Lucas from a company event, something painful flickered across her face. Because long before Olivia returned, she had already fallen in love with him herself. And that hidden truth was about to make everything far more dangerous. Vanessa Reed had spent 7 years building a life around a man who never knew she loved him. Every morning, she arrived before everyone else. Every evening, she left after everyone else. She organized Lucas Sterling's schedule, protected his time, solved problems before they reached him, and quietly celebrated every success he achieved. To the rest of the company, she was simply the perfect executive assistant. Only Vanessa knew the truth. Somewhere along the way, admiration had become love. And love had become heartbreak. Late one evening, she sat alone in her office reviewing Lucas's calendar. Her eyes drifted toward a photograph from a recent charity event. Lucas stood beside Hannah, both smiling, both happy. The sight reopened an old wound. A flashback surfaced. 2 years earlier, Lucas and Vanessa had worked late preparing for a major company merger. Around midnight, Lucas noticed she hadn't eaten. Without thinking, he ordered dinner for both of them. They spent hours talking, laughing, sharing stories. For weeks afterward, Vanessa convinced herself something special was growing between them. But she had misunderstood. Lucas treated everyone with kindness. The attention she treasured had never been romantic. Then Hannah entered his life. And suddenly Lucas smiled differently, looked differently, loved differently. Vanessa noticed immediately. That realization broke something inside her. Meanwhile, across town, Olivia Monroe sat inside a luxurious penthouse overlooking the city skyline. Several photographs lay spread across a glass table, each one carefully selected, each one designed to create doubt. Her phone buzzed. "Vanessa." "Did Hannah receive the second message?" Olivia asked. "Yes." "And?" Vanessa hesitated. I don't know if it's working. Olivia smiled coldly. It will. The confidence in her voice felt unsettling. Because Olivia understood something important. Trust rarely collapses overnight. It erodes slowly. One doubt. One question. One misunderstanding at a time. Back at Sterling Innovations, Lucas was reviewing internal security logs. The confidential leaks were becoming impossible to ignore. Someone had accessed restricted scheduling information. Someone close. Very close. The discovery bothered him more than he admitted. Not because of business. Because the leaked information seemed strangely connected to his personal life. Every leaked schedule involved meetings where Olivia Munro appeared. Every leaked schedule eventually became another anonymous photograph sent to Hannah. The pattern was beginning to emerge. Lucas leaned back in his chair. For the first time, he stopped seeing separate incidents. Instead, he saw a coordinated attack. Someone wasn't targeting his company. Someone was targeting his relationship. And somewhere deep inside, an uncomfortable feeling surfaced. The person responsible might be someone he trusted. Meanwhile, Hannah sat alone in her apartment staring at another message. No photograph this time. Only a sentence. Ask Lucas why he keeps meeting Olivia. For the first time, Hannah didn't feel confusion. She felt concern. Not because she doubted Lucas. Because someone seemed determined to make her doubt him. And that realization was even more frightening. As she locked her phone and looked out the window, neither she nor Lucas realized the game was entering a dangerous new phase. Because Olivia had decided the subtle approach was no longer enough. And her next move would bring the first real test of Hannah and Lucas's love. The attack came on a Friday evening. And for the first time since Olivia Munro began her scheme, Hannah Brooks felt her confidence truly shaken. She had just returned home after classes when her phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. Another photograph. But this one was different. Much different. The image showed Lucas entering a private suite at the Grand Crescent Hotel. Only seconds behind him was Olivia. The angle made it appear as though they had arrived together. As though they had planned to meet. As though they were hiding something. Beneath the photo sat a single sentence. How many more lies are you willing to believe? Hannah stared at the screen. Her pulse quickened. Not because she trusted the message. Because the photograph looked convincing. Painfully convincing. Across town, Lucas was completely unaware. The truth behind the image was far less dramatic. Earlier that afternoon, investors had gathered inside the hotel for a confidential acquisition meeting involving several corporations. Olivia happened to be one of the attendees. Nothing more. But whoever took the photograph had carefully removed everyone else from the frame. The manipulation was subtle, professional, designed to create exactly the wrong impression. Meanwhile, Olivia sat inside her penthouse smiling at the result. She had spent days planning this moment. For the first time, she believed Hannah might finally confront Lucas. And confrontation created vulnerability. Vulnerability created cracks. Cracks destroyed relationships. That was always the goal. Back at the apartment, Hannah struggled internally. A flashback surfaced. The hospital. Lucas securing the specialist who saved Rose. The scholarships. The quiet support. The years of kindness before she inherited a single dollar. Everything Lucas had ever done pointed toward honesty. Yet the photographs kept appearing. The contradiction exhausted her. Later that night, Lucas arrived carrying takeout from her favorite restaurant. The moment he entered, he noticed something was wrong. You seem quiet. Hannah hesitated. Then finally asked the question. Why do you keep meeting Olivia Munro? The room fell silent. Lucas froze. Not because he was guilty, because he immediately understood what was happening. The photographs, the messages, the timing. Someone was feeding information to an outsider. And suddenly, another disturbing realization surfaced. Only a handful of people inside Sterling Innovations knew his complete schedule. The list was very small, dangerously small. As Hannah watched him process the question, Lucas's expression changed. Not defensive, not angry, concerned, deeply concerned. Because for the first time, he realized this wasn't random harassment. Someone inside his inner circle was helping destroy the relationship he had spent years fighting for. And somewhere in the city, that person was preparing the next attack. For several seconds after Hannah asked about Olivia Monroe, neither she nor Lucas spoke. The silence felt heavier than any argument. Not because trust had broken, because both of them understood something important. Someone wanted this exact moment to happen. Someone wanted doubt to enter the room. Lucas slowly sat beside her. Then he held out his hand. "Give me your phone." Hannah looked surprised. "What?" "The messages." Without hesitation, she handed it to him. Lucas scrolled through every photograph, every anonymous text, every carefully planted accusation. The deeper he looked, the clearer the pattern became. None of the images actually proved anything. They only suggested something. And that was exactly what made them dangerous. A flashback surfaced in Lucas's mind. Years earlier, during the collapse of his first company, false rumors had spread among investors. No single rumor was powerful enough to destroy the business. But together, they created fear. Fear became doubt. Doubt became damage. The same strategy was being used now. Only this time, the target wasn't his company. It was his relationship. Lucas handed the phone back, then looked directly into Hannah's eyes. "Do you want the truth?" Hannah nodded. "Always." So Lucas told her everything. The business negotiations, the investor meetings, the acquisition project, Olivia's involvement, the unavoidable encounters. Nothing hidden, nothing edited, nothing left out. By the time he finished, Hannah noticed something. Every photograph had removed context. Every message relied on assumptions. Every accusation depended on her ignoring the bigger picture. Suddenly, the entire scheme became easier to see. Not because the evidence disappeared, because the manipulation became visible. Lucas leaned forward. "Someone is feeding information to whoever is doing this." "You think so?" "I know so." The certainty in his voice sent a chill through her. Meanwhile, across town, Vanessa Reed was forwarding another confidential schedule to Olivia. Yet for the first time, guilt appeared. A memory surfaced. The day Lucas anonymously paid for an employee's medical treatment. The day he gave bonuses during a difficult financial year. The day he helped a struggling intern stay in school. Lucas had always been a good man. And deep down, Vanessa knew it. But jealousy had a way of silencing conscience. Back in the apartment, Hannah reached for Lucas's hand. "Then let's find out who's behind it." Lucas smiled. Not because the problem was solved. Because she chose trust. The same trust their enemies had been trying to destroy. At that moment, neither realized they had just ruined Olivia's original plan. The relationship hadn't cracked. It had become stronger, which meant Olivia would soon be forced to make a much riskier move. And desperate people often make dangerous mistakes. For the first time since the anonymous messages began, Hannah Brooks and Lucas Sterling stopped reacting and started planning. 3 days after their conversation, Lucas quietly launched a strategy designed to uncover the leak inside Sterling Innovations. The plan was simple, but effective. 3 senior employees, received 3 different confidential schedules. Each schedule contained a slightly different version of Lucas's upcoming meetings. Only one included a fake private lunch with Olivia Monroe. A lunch that would never actually happen. Now all Lucas had to do was wait. Meanwhile, Hannah played her role. When another anonymous message arrived, she did something completely unexpected. Instead of ignoring it, she replied, "Maybe you're right, I'm beginning to question him." The response felt wrong to send. But it was necessary. Several minutes later, another message appeared. The sender was taking the bait. Excellent. For the first time, the mysterious person behind the attacks believed Hannah's trust in Lucas was weakening. Exactly as planned. Across town, Olivia Monroe smiled as she read Hannah's response. At last. Progress. For weeks, she had been trying to drive a wedge between them. Now it finally seemed to be working. Her confidence grew. And confidence made people careless. A flashback surfaced. Years earlier, Olivia had built her business empire through calculated risks. Again and again, success came after opponents underestimated her. The problem was that success had also created arrogance. And arrogance often appeared just before a fall. The next morning, another anonymous photo arrived. It showed Lucas supposedly meeting Olivia for the fake lunch. The exact fake lunch. The one that existed only on one employee's schedule. Lucas stared at the image, then slowly looked up. His expression hardened. The trap had worked. Only one person had access to that version. Vanessa Reed. The realization was painful. Not because he disliked Vanessa. Because he trusted her. For 7 years. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Somewhere else in the city, Vanessa sat alone in her office. Her phone buzzed. A message from Olivia. "It won't be much longer now." Vanessa stared at the words. For the first time, guilt struck harder than jealousy. Because despite everything, she knew something Olivia refused to understand. Lucas genuinely loved Hannah. And Hannah genuinely loved Lucas. Destroying that wasn't winning. It was hurting 2 innocent people. Back at the apartment, Hannah received another anonymous message. But this one contained a mistake. A tiny detail. Easy to overlook. Yet important. The sender referenced a conversation that only Olivia Monroe could have known about. Hannah's eyes widened. Then she smiled. Because for the first time, they weren't just following clues anymore. They were getting close. Very close. And somewhere in the shadows, the people trying to tear them apart were beginning to make mistakes they could never take back. The closer Olivia Monroe came to victory, the more careless she became. And Lucas Sterling was counting on it. 2 weeks after identifying Vanessa as the source of the leak, Lucas and Hannah quietly shifted from investigation to evidence gathering. Knowing someone is responsible wasn't enough. They needed proof. Real proof. The kind nobody could deny. The kind that would expose the entire scheme. One evening, Hannah received another anonymous message. This time, she deliberately escalated her response. "You were right. Lucas keeps avoiding my questions. Maybe I never really knew him." The reply appeared less than 2 minutes later. Far too quickly. The sender was emotionally invested. Watching closely. Exactly what Lucas had predicted. Across town, Olivia smiled as she read Hannah's message. Everything seemed to be unfolding perfectly. Hannah appeared vulnerable. Lucas appeared distracted. The relationship seemed weaker than ever. What Olivia didn't know was that every message was now being documented. Every phone number traced. Every interaction preserved. Meanwhile, Vanessa was beginning to unravel. A flashback surfaced as she sat alone in her office. Years earlier, Lucas had defended her during a board dispute when other executives tried blaming her for a failed project. He knew she wasn't responsible. He protected her anyway. The memory haunted her now, because the man she was betraying had once protected her career. For the first time, shame began outweighing jealousy. But it was already too late. The following afternoon, Lucas and Hannah staged their biggest performance yet. Inside a busy restaurant, they appeared to argue. Not loudly. Just enough. Enough for nearby people to notice. Enough for photos to be taken. Enough for word to spread. At one point, Hannah stood and walked out. Lucas remained behind. The scene looked convincing. Painfully convincing. And exactly as expected, photographs of the staged disagreement reached Olivia within hours. She believed the relationship was finally collapsing. The trap was working. Then came the mistake. The fatal mistake. Certain she had already won, Olivia arranged a private meeting with Vanessa. For the first time, they openly discussed everything. The photographs, the anonymous messages, the plan to separate Hannah and Lucas. Neither woman noticed they were being observed. Because weeks earlier, Lucas had hired a professional investigator after discovering the leak. The investigator sat several tables away, quietly recording, quietly documenting, quietly collecting the evidence that would end everything. By the end of the meeting, Olivia had unknowingly handed Lucas exactly what he needed. Proof. Not suspicion. Not assumptions. Proof. That night, the investigator delivered the recordings. Lucas watched silently. Hannah sat beside him. As the evidence played, every missing piece finally connected. Olivia. Vanessa. The messages. The photographs. The manipulation. Everything. When the recording ended, silence filled the room. Then Hannah looked at Lucas. What happens now? Lucas closed the file slowly. His answer was calm. Now we let them think they've won. Because 3 days later, the city's largest charity gala would take place. And Olivia was already planning one final humiliation. What she didn't know was that the same stage she intended to use to destroy Hannah and Lucas was about to become the stage where her entire scheme would be exposed in front of everyone. The charity gala was supposed to celebrate hope. Instead, it became the night the truth finally came out. Held inside the Grand Meridian Ballroom, the event brought together business leaders, politicians, investors, journalists, and community figures from across the city. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the massive hall. Elegant music drifted through the air. Camera flashes sparkled from every direction. At first glance, everything appeared perfect. But beneath the glamour, multiple lives were about to change forever. Across the ballroom, Olivia Munro stood confidently in a designer gown. She looked victorious, certain, untouchable. The staged argument between Lucas and Hannah had convinced her that their relationship was hanging by a thread. Tonight, she planned to deliver the final blow. Nearby, Vanessa Reed appeared far less comfortable. For days, guilt had been consuming her. The recordings, the lies, the betrayal. She didn't know Lucas had evidence. But deep down, she knew she had crossed a line she could never uncross. Meanwhile, Lucas and Hannah entered the ballroom together. The sight immediately surprised Olivia. For a brief second, confusion crossed her face. Then she dismissed it. Appearances could be deceptive. After all, deception was her specialty. The evening progressed normally. Speeches, awards, charitable donations, networking, everything exactly as expected. Then came Lucas's turn to address the audience. As CEO of Sterling Innovations and one of the event's largest sponsors, he stepped onto the stage. The room fell silent. Hundreds of eyes turned toward him. Olivia smiled. This was the moment she had been waiting for. What happened next was not. Lucas began calmly. Tonight is about integrity. The statement seemed harmless. Then the large screen behind him illuminated. Olivia's smile faded slightly. The first image appeared. Anonymous messages. Then photographs. Then timelines. Then evidence connecting every piece together. A murmur spread across the room. Confusion quickly became shock. The next slide appeared. The fake lunch meeting. The leaked schedules. The manipulated photographs. The room grew quieter. Far quieter. Because people were beginning to understand. This wasn't a presentation. It was an exposure. Olivia's heart started racing. For the first time all evening, genuine fear appeared. Then came the recordings. The investigators' evidence. Her private conversations with Vanessa. Her admissions. Her plans. Her intentions. Every word echoed through the ballroom. No one spoke. No one moved. The evidence was overwhelming. There was no explaining it away. No twisting the narrative. No escape. Across the room, Vanessa lowered her head. Tears filled her eyes. The shame was unbearable. Not because she had been exposed. Because she finally saw the damage her jealousy had caused. Olivia, however, reacted differently. Anger replaced panic. She stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. But the protest sounded weak. Because everyone had heard the recordings. Everyone had seen the evidence. For years, Olivia had controlled situations through confidence. Tonight, confidence wasn't enough. The truth was stronger. As security approached, the ballroom remained silent. The powerful businesswoman, who once believed she could manipulate anyone, stood completely exposed. The same public humiliation she planned for Hannah and Lucas had become her own. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. When the presentation ended, Lucas stepped away from the podium. Instead of celebrating, he walked directly toward Hannah. The entire room watched. Then Hannah took his hand. A simple gesture. Yet it said everything. The attack had failed. The lies had failed. The manipulation had failed. Because the one thing Olivia never understood was this. Trust built over years cannot be destroyed by weeks of deception. As applause slowly filled the ballroom, Hannah squeezed Lucas's hand. The worst was finally over. Or so they thought. Because later that night, Rose Brooks would reveal one final surprise that nobody, not even Lucas, saw coming. And that surprise would change their future forever. The charity gala ended with applause. But for Hannah Brooks, the most important moment of the night happened afterward. Long after the guests left. Long after the cameras disappeared. Long after Olivia Monroe and Vanessa Reed were gone. For the first time in weeks, peace returned. Real peace. The kind that settles into your heart after surviving a storm. Later that evening, Hannah and Lucas arrived at Rose Brooks' apartment. The familiar home felt warm as always. The same old furniture. The same family photographs. The same love that had carried Hannah through the hardest years of her life. Rose was waiting. And judging by the smile on her face, she had been planning something. "I've been keeping a secret," she announced. Hannah laughed. "After everything we've been through, that doesn't sound reassuring." Rose smiled. Then she handed them a folder. Inside were legal documents. Foundation documents. Scholarship plans. Walter Brooks' final vision. Years earlier, before his death, Walter had written detailed instructions for what should happen if the family land ever became valuable. He didn't want the wealth to stop with the family. He wanted it to create opportunities for others, especially struggling students. Students like Hannah once was. As Hannah read the documents, tears filled her eyes. A flashback surfaced. Working late nights at the diner. skipping meals, worrying about tuition, praying for opportunities. Then another memory followed. The anonymous scholarship, the unexpected help, the chance that changed her life. And suddenly, everything made sense. Walter's dream and Lucas's kindness shared the same heart. Helping people rise. Rose reached for Hannah's hand. Your grandfather would be proud of you. Then she looked at Lucas. And he'd be grateful for you. The words touched Lucas deeply. Because years earlier, when he first saw Hannah giving away her lunch to a homeless stranger, he never imagined that moment would eventually lead him here. To family. To love. To home. Several weeks later, construction began on the Brooks Educational Foundation. Together, Hannah and Lucas funded scholarships for students facing the same struggles Hannah once endured. The project quickly became one of the city's most respected charitable programs. And through it all, their relationship only grew stronger. The attacks, the lies, the betrayals. Instead of breaking them, they had strengthened the foundation beneath their love. Then came a beautiful autumn afternoon. Lucas asked Hannah to meet him at a familiar place. The old bus station. The place where everything began. The place where he first saw her years ago. When Hannah arrived, she immediately recognized the bench. The exact bench. The exact location. The exact spot where a hungry college student once gave away her lunch. The memory made her smile. Lucas stood waiting. Nervous. A rare sight. You look terrified, Hannah teased. I am. She laughed, then noticed the emotion in his eyes. And suddenly, her heart began racing too. Lucas slowly took her hands. For a moment, neither spoke. The sounds of the city seemed to fade away. Only the two of them remained. Finally, Lucas broke the silence. Years ago, I watched a young woman give away her only meal. Tears instantly gathered in Hannah's eyes. I remember. That moment changed my life. He smiled softly. I fell in love before I even knew your name. The tears escaped. Not because she was sad. Because she understood. Every sacrifice. Every silent act of kindness. Every year he spent loving her from a distance. Every step that brought them here. Lucas slowly lowered himself onto one knee. The world seemed to stop. People nearby disappeared. Time disappeared. Everything disappeared. Except him. Except her. Except the question she had dreamed of hearing. Hannah Brooks. His voice trembled. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down her face. Happy tears. Beautiful tears. The kind that arrive when life gives you more than you ever expected. Without hesitation, she nodded, then laughed through her tears. Yes. Lucas smiled. Yes. Yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger. And as they embraced, the same bus station that witnessed the beginning of their story now witnessed its most beautiful chapter. 1 year later, family and friends gathered beneath a canopy of white flowers. Rose proudly walked Hannah down the aisle. The guests stood. The music played. And Lucas waited at the altar with tears in his eyes. Not because he was nervous. Because he was grateful. Grateful for every struggle that led them here. Grateful for every lesson. Every sacrifice. Every second chance. When Hannah finally reached him, their eyes met. And both remembered the journey. The poor girl who never noticed him. The man who loved her in silence. The hospital. The secrets. The betrayals. The tests. The victories. Everything. The ceremony was beautiful. The celebration unforgettable. And as evening settled over the reception, Rose quietly watched from her seat. A smile filled her face. Walter's dream had survived. Hannah had found happiness. And the family she fought so hard to protect was finally complete. Later that night, Lucas and Hannah slipped away from the crowd for a moment alone. Standing beneath the stars, Hannah leaned against his shoulder. Then she smiled. "Do you still watch me when I'm not looking?" Lucas laughed. "Every chance I get." They both laughed. Then he kissed her forehead. And together, they looked toward a future filled with possibilities. A future built on trust, on kindness, on sacrifice, and most importantly, on a love that survived every attempt to tear it apart. Because true love isn't proven when everything is easy. It's proven when everything tries to break it. And theirs never did. Read the end.